Admiral Sarah Chun stood at the massive observation deck of Luna Station, watching Earth rotate slowly below. The blue marble looked peaceful from this distance, but she knew that appearance was deceiving. Humanity had just received the most significant message in its history, and it wasn't a welcome wagon. The holographic display flickered to life beside her, showing the replay of the transmission that had arrived 3 days ago. The image materialized into a tall, crystalline being with multiple appendages and what could generously be called a face. When it spoke, the universal translator rendered its words in cold, mechanical English. Primitive species of the third planet, you have been monitored by the Galactic Council for your recent expansion beyond your solar system. Your aggressive nature, destructive tendencies, and rapid technological advancement mark you as a Class 7 threat to galactic stability. You have 30 of your planetary rotations to submit to Council authority, dismantle your military forces, and accept placement under the Zephyrian Protectorate. Failure to comply will result in immediate pacification of your species. This message constitutes your only warning. Sarah had watched this message dozens of times, and each viewing made her angrier. The arrogance was breathtaking. These aliens had observed humanity from the shadows, made judgments about their character, and now demanded surrender without even attempting diplomatic contact. "Admiral, the Joint Chiefs are ready for your briefing," came a voice from behind her. Sarah turned to see Captain Rodriguez, her aide-de-camp, holding a data pad with the latest intelligence reports. "How are the preparations coming along?" she asked as they walked toward the command center. "Better than expected, ma'am. The Luna shipyards have been running triple shifts since the message arrived. We've got 17 new corvettes ready for deployment, and the Beijing is ahead of schedule for its weapon upgrades." Sarah nodded grimly. The Beijing was humanity's first true battleship, built in secret over the past 5 years as part of the Deep Defense Initiative. Most of Earth's population didn't even know it existed. Now it might be their salvation. The command center buzzed with activity as officers from every major nation worked side by side. The alien threat had accomplished what decades of diplomacy couldn't: true human unity. Russian engineers worked alongside American tacticians, Chinese scientists collaborated with European strategists, and African logistics experts coordinated with Australian communications specialists. General Morrison, the graying head of the Joint Chiefs, looked up as Sarah entered. "Admiral, we've finished our analysis of their transmission. The linguistics team has some interesting findings." Dr. Elizabeth Hayes, the lead xenolinguist, stepped forward with her report. The transmission used a standard galactic communication protocol, which suggests this council has dealt with emerging species before. However, there are subtle indicators that they're not used to being challenged. The phrasing is formulaic, almost bureaucratic. They expect compliance. "What about the 30-day deadline?" Sarah asked. "That's where it gets interesting," Dr. Hayes continued. "The time frame suggests they're not in our immediate vicinity. 30 days gives us time to prepare, but more importantly, it tells us they're confident we can't mount any meaningful resistance." Sarah smiled for the first time in days. Then, they don't know humans very well. The next several hours were spent reviewing humanity's hidden capabilities. The Deep Defense Initiative had been born from the assumption that first contact might not be friendly. Hidden shipyards throughout the solar system had been building a fleet in complete secrecy. Advanced weapons research had produced energy shields, plasma cannons, and, most importantly, something the aliens couldn't possibly expect. Dr. Kevin Park, the head of theoretical physics at Luna Research Station, presented the crown jewel of human ingenuity. "We call it the quantum displacement drive. Instead of traditional faster-than-light travel, it temporarily shifts our ships into a parallel dimensional space where the laws of physics work slightly differently. We can cover vast distances in minutes rather than months." "How vast?" General Morrison asked. "We could reach Alpha Centauri in 6 hours. The Galactic Council's staging area, based on the transmission's origin point, would take about 14 hours. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Not only could humanity defend itself, but they could take the fight to the enemy. Admiral Chen looked around the room at the faces of Earth's finest military minds. These people had spent their careers preparing for conflicts between nations. Now they were planning humanity's first interstellar war. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "we have a choice to make. We can surrender, accept protectorate status, and hope these aliens are benevolent rulers. Or we can remind the galaxy why humans have never been conquered by anyone. The vote was unanimous. Over the following days, the response began to take shape. It wouldn't be a simple diplomatic rejection. Humanity would send a message of its own, delivered in person and backed by the full might of their hidden fleet. The Beijing emerged from its concealed construction facility on the far side of the moon, stretching nearly 2 kilometers in length. Its hull was angular and predatory, designed as much to intimidate as to fight. Along its sides, weapons ports opened to reveal energy cannons that could crack a moon in half. Shield generators hummed with barely contained power. Accompanying the Beijing were 12 destroyers, 36 corvettes, and 6 support vessels carrying the most advanced fighters humanity had ever built. Each ship bore the flag of United Earth, a new symbol created specifically for this moment. The blue and green of Earth surrounded by the stars of the galaxy, with a clenched fist holding lightning bolts at the center. Captain James Walsh had been chosen to command the Beijing not just for his tactical brilliance, but for his ability to remain calm under pressure. As he stood on the bridge of humanity's most powerful warship, he felt anything but calm. The weight of his entire species' future rested on his shoulders. "Captain, we've received the final transmission from Earth Command," reported his communications officer. "Let's hear it," Walsh said. Admiral Chen's voice filled the bridge. "Captain Walsh, you carry with you not just the hopes of humanity, but our answer to those who would enslave us. Show them what humans do when backed into a corner. Show them what 7 billion free people look like when united. Make them regret the day they decided to threaten Earth." The fleet's departure was witnessed by hidden cameras on Luna Station and transmitted to every screen on Earth. Humanity watched in stunned silence as their secret protectors engaged their quantum drives and vanished in flashes of blue light, racing toward a confrontation that would determine the fate of their species. Meanwhile, on the Galactic Council's command station in the Tau Ceti system, High Counselor Zephyx reviewed the daily reports with growing satisfaction. Another primitive species would soon join the ranks of the protectorates, adding their biological and technological distinctiveness to the Council's vast empire. The humans had been surprisingly quiet since receiving their ultimatum. No desperate diplomatic transmissions, no pleading for mercy, no attempts to negotiate. Zephyx assumed they were simply paralyzed by fear, as most species were when confronted with the Council's overwhelming power. "High Counselor," came a transmission from the sensor station. "We're detecting some unusual quantum fluctuations in nearby space." "Probably just solar activity," Zephyx replied dismissively. "Continue monitoring the human homeworld for their surrender transmission." What Zephyx didn't know was that 55 human warships had just dropped out of quantum space at the edge of their system, and Captain Walsh was preparing to deliver a very different kind of message than the one the Council expected. The Beijing sensors swept across the Tau Ceti system, mapping defenses and cataloging targets. The Galactic Council station was massive, easily 10 times larger than anything humanity had built. It bristled with weapons and was surrounded by a fleet of alien warships that dwarfed Earth's entire navy. "Impressive," Walsh murmured, "but size isn't everything. What's our tactical assessment?" Commander Torres, his tactical officer, looked up from her displays with a grim smile. "Their ships are big, powerful, and designed to intimidate primitive species into surrender. But they're also slow, outdated, and built for patrol duties rather than real combat. Our intelligence was right. The Council has been the dominant power for so long, they've forgotten how to fight. And their station? Heavily defended. But those defenses are designed to repel conventional attacks. I don't think they've ever encountered quantum displacement technology or phase-variant shields." Walsh nodded slowly. The plan was audacious, probably suicidal, but it was their only chance. If humanity was going to make a statement, it needed to be loud enough for the entire galaxy to hear. "All ships, this is Captain Walsh. Begin the approach. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves today. We're fighting for every species that's ever been forced to kneel before this Council. We're fighting for the right of every sentient being to determine their own destiny." The human fleet moved forward through the void, their ship's advanced stealth systems keeping them hidden until they were ready to strike. Behind them, Earth continued its quiet rotation, unaware that its children were about to announce humanity's arrival on the galactic stage in the most dramatic way possible. High Counselor Zephyx was reviewing agricultural reports from the Terran sector when the alarms began to sound. The command center erupted into chaos as officers scrambled to understand what was happening. "High Counselor," shouted the sensor operator. "Unknown vessels are decloaking throughout the system. They appear to be from the human homeworld." Zephyx's crystalline features shifted into what might have been surprise. "Impossible. Our intelligence indicated they possessed no interstellar capability beyond primitive chemical rockets." "Sir, incoming transmission from the lead vessel. They're requesting to speak with you directly." For a moment, Zephyx considered ignoring the communication. How dare these primitives demand an audience with a High Counselor of the Galactic Federation? But curiosity won out. What could these creatures possibly have to say? "Put them through," Zephyx commanded. The main display shimmered and revealed the image of a human male in what appeared to be military attire. He stood straight, his eyes hard, and when he spoke, his voice carried the kind of authority that Zephyx had only heard from other High Counselors. "High Counselor Zephyx, I am Captain James Walsh of the United Earth ship Beijing. I'm here to deliver humanity's response to your ultimatum." Zephyx's appendages clicked in what passed for amusement among his species. "Have you come to surrender personally? How quaint. Very well, I accept your submission on behalf of the Galactic Council." The human's expression didn't change. "I'm afraid you misunderstood. We haven't come to surrender. We've come to decline your generous offer of enslavement and deliver a counter-proposal." The command center fell silent. In the 1,000 years of the Galactic Council's existence, no species had ever responded to an ultimatum with anything other than abject surrender. "You dare to make demands of the Council?" Zephyx's voice rose to a dangerous pitch. "Not demands," Captain Walsh replied calmly. "A battle proclamation." The words hung in the void between the two ships like a challenge thrown down by an ancient warrior. Captain Walsh could see the alien's crystalline features shift through what he assumed were various emotions: surprise, outrage, and perhaps something that might have been fear. "A battle proclamation?" High Counselor Zephyx repeated, his translated voice carrying disbelief. "You primitive creatures think you can challenge the combined might of 3,000 star systems?" Walsh stepped closer to the camera, his voice steady and clear. "High Counselor, you made several mistakes when you sent that ultimatum to Earth. First, you assumed we were helpless. Second, you assumed we were alone. And third, you assumed we would be afraid." Behind Walsh, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. Commander Torres whispered tactical updates while the communications officer monitored Council fleet movements. Everything was proceeding according to plan, but Walsh knew they had only minutes before the aliens realized the true scope of what they were facing. "You speak boldly for someone whose entire species numbers fewer than the crew of a single Council dreadnought," Zephyx replied. "What could you possibly offer that would interest the Council?" Walsh smiled, and there was nothing friendly about it. "We offer you a choice, High Counselor. Withdraw your ultimatum, recognize Earth's sovereignty, and establish proper diplomatic relations. Or learn why humanity has never been conquered by anyone." The alien's laughter sounded like breaking glass through the translator. "Never conquered? You wage war against yourselves constantly. Your entire history is nothing but conflict and violence." "Exactly," Walsh said. "And every single one of those conflicts taught us something new about warfare. Every battle made us stronger, more innovative, more determined. You've had peace for 1,000 years, High Counselor. Do you know what that makes you?" Before Zephyx could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the Council station. The alien's attention was drawn to displays showing tactical information that made his crystalline form shift to a deep purple color. What is species displayed when experiencing shock? "What is this?" Zephyx demanded, speaking to his own officers rather than Walsh. "High Counselor," came a panicked voice from the Council's tactical station. "The human vessels are moving into attack formation. They've somehow bypassed our outer sensor grid. We're showing 55 ships where there should be empty space." Walsh continued speaking as if nothing had happened. "That makes you soft, High Counselor. You've become so accustomed to others surrendering that you've forgotten how to fight. But we haven't. We've spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of war, and we've gotten very good at it. The main display split to show tactical readouts from throughout the system. Council ships were scrambling to respond to threats that appeared and disappeared like ghosts. Human vessels phased in and out of normal space, striking at communication relays and sensor stations before vanishing again. Impossible, Zephyx breathed. No species has ever developed quantum displacement technology. The theoretical requirements alone would take millennia to master. Humans have a saying, Walsh replied. Necessity is the mother of invention. When you threatened our existence, you gave us all the necessity we needed. The Beijing shimmered and, suddenly, appeared directly in front of the council station, close enough that its massive bulk filled the alien's view screen. Energy coursed along its hull as weapon systems came online, and shields that bent light itself made the ship appear to flicker in and out of existence. This is our counterproposal, Walsh announced. Earth claims the right to exist as a free and sovereign world. Any attempt to subjugate or control humanity will be met with the full force of our military. We're not asking for permission, and we're not negotiating. We're informing you of a new reality. High Counselor Zephyx's form had shifted to a deep red, indicating extreme agitation. You cannot threaten the Galactic Council. We have fleets that could reduce your homeworld to atomic dust. Perhaps, Walsh acknowledged. But the question is, how many of your worlds would we reduce to atomic dust first? How many of your fleets would we destroy? How many of your people would die learning that humans don't surrender? The tactical displays showed the true scope of the human strategy. While the Beijing held the Council's attention, the rest of the human fleet had been systematically disabling defensive installations throughout the system. Corvettes danced between asteroids, using them as cover while they struck at supply depots. Destroyers emerged from quantum space directly behind Council ships, their weapons already firing before the aliens could react. Commander Torres leaned over to whisper in Walsh's ear. Sir, we've secured objectives Alpha through Delta. The station's defensive grid is down to 40% effectiveness. Walsh nodded slightly, never taking his eyes off the alien commander. High Counselor, I want you to understand something. This isn't our fleet. These aren't our best ships. This is a single expeditionary force, sent to deliver a message. If you want to see what humanity looks like when we're actually trying to hurt someone, please continue with your current course of action. It was a bluff, but a convincing one. The truth was that this represented nearly the entire human space navy, built in secret over 5 years of desperate preparation. But Zephyx didn't know that, and the demonstration had been impressive enough to give the alien pause. What are your terms? Zephyx asked finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Simple. Formal recognition of Earth as a sovereign power. Establishment of diplomatic relations on equal terms. And, most importantly, a guarantee that the Council will never again threaten the existence of humanity. And in return, Walsh's smile returned, warmer this time, but no less dangerous. In return, we don't demonstrate what happens when 7 billion humans decide they need Lebensraum among the stars. The bridge fell silent as both commanders considered their options. Zephyx was clearly communicating with his superiors through some kind of internal channel, his crystalline features shifting through various colors as information was exchanged. Meanwhile, the human fleet continued its demonstration. A massive Council dreadnought attempted to move into position to threaten the Beijing, only to discover that 3 human destroyers had somehow positioned themselves directly above, below, and behind it. The alien ship found itself in a perfect crossfire with no escape route. Dr. Elizabeth Hayes had been right about one thing. The Council wasn't used to being challenged. Their ships were powerful but predictable, designed more for intimidation than actual combat. Their tactics were centuries out of date, based on overwhelming firepower rather than maneuverability and innovation. Captain, Commander Torres reported quietly, we're receiving coded transmissions from several of the smaller alien vessels. It appears some of their ship captains are requesting permission to surrender. Walsh nodded grimly. Individual alien commanders were seeing the writing on the wall, but he needed to convince the leadership. Patch me through to the entire Council fleet, he ordered. Open channel, sir. Attention all council vessels, Walsh announced, his voice carrying to every ship in the system. This is Captain Walsh of the United Earth Navy. You have fought bravely, but you're outmatched. Any vessel that stands down immediately will be treated according to the laws of war. Any vessel that continues to resist will be destroyed. You have 60 seconds to decide. The effect was immediate. Warning lights began flashing throughout the council station as ship after ship reported their intention to withdraw from combat. The alien crews had expected to face primitive savages with chemical rockets, not a sophisticated military force with technology they couldn't understand. High Counselor Zephyx watched his fleet dissolve around him with growing horror. This is impossible, he kept repeating. How could a species we've never heard of develop such capabilities? You heard of us, Walsh corrected. You just weren't listening. Every probe you sent to our system, every spy satellite you positioned to monitor our development, we detected them all. We've been preparing for this moment since the first time we realized we weren't alone in the universe. It wasn't entirely true. Humanity had only discovered the alien surveillance network 18 months ago through a combination of luck and advanced sensor technology. But those 18 months had been enough to change everything. Once they knew they were being watched, human scientists and engineers had worked around the clock to develop countermeasures. The quantum displacement technology, Zephyx said slowly. You developed it specifically to counter our detection methods. Among other things, did you really think a species that split the atom, landed on other worlds, and built artificial intelligence in less than a century would need 1,000 years to master quantum mechanics? The alien's form shifted to a pale blue, uncertainty and fear. What do you want? Walsh gestured to his communications officer, who began transmitting a prepared document. These are humanity's terms for peace. I suggest you read them carefully, because this is the only offer you're going to receive. The terms were simple, but comprehensive. Earth would be recognized as a sovereign power with full rights under galactic law. Humanity would establish embassies on major council worlds, and expected the same courtesy in return. Trade relationships would be established on equal terms, with no restrictions on human expansion into unclaimed systems. Most importantly, the document included a mutual defense clause. Any attack on Earth would be considered an attack on humanity itself, with all the consequences that implied. This is generous, Zephyx admitted after reviewing the terms. Why offer peace when you could simply continue fighting? Walsh's expression grew thoughtful. Because despite what you might think, humans don't enjoy war. We're good at it, but we don't seek it out. We fight when we have to protect what matters to us. Right now, what matters is making sure this never happens again. And if other species challenge your expansion, then they'll learn what you learned today. Humans don't surrender, we don't back down, and we don't forgive threats to our existence. But we're also willing to be friends with anyone who treats us as equals. The negotiation continued for another hour, with details being worked out through diplomatic channels that connected Earth to the Council's capital world. Walsh remained on the bridge throughout, projecting calm confidence while internally marveling at how well the plan had worked. They had gambled everything on a single bold stroke, hoping to convince the Council that humanity was too dangerous to subjugate and too useful to destroy. The aliens' own arrogance had worked in humanity's favor. They had been so certain of their superiority that they hadn't bothered to gather accurate intelligence about human capabilities. Captain, his communications officer announced, we're receiving confirmation from Earth Command. The Council has formally accepted our terms. Ambassador Martinez is being dispatched to begin formal diplomatic relations. Walsh nodded slowly. They had done it. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy not as supplicants begging for mercy, but as equals demanding respect. Signal the fleet, he ordered. All ships prepare for return to Earth. Our work here is done. As the human vessels began to fade back into quantum space, High Counselor Zephyx transmitted one final message to the Beijing. Captain Walsh, the alien said, his voice carrying something that might have been respect. I believe we underestimated your species. Walsh smiled. High Counselor, that was the point. The next time you encounter a species that seems primitive, remember this day. Remember that evolution doesn't always follow predictable paths, and never assume that technological development equals military capability. And what should we expect from humanity going forward? The same thing we've always been: explorers, inventors, builders, and, when necessary, warriors. We're going to spread among the stars, High Counselor. We're going to build new worlds, discover new knowledge, and push the boundaries of what's possible. And if anyone tries to stop us. Walsh's smile turned predatory. Well, you've seen what happens when someone threatens Earth. The transmission ended, and the Beijing disappeared into quantum space, racing back toward a small blue world where 7 billion humans were about to learn that they were no longer alone in the universe, and that their children had just secured their place among the stars through courage, ingenuity, and the indomitable human spirit that had carried them from caves to starships in the span of recorded history. Behind them, the Galactic Council began the difficult process of adjusting to a new reality where they were no longer the sole arbiters of interstellar affairs. For the first time in 1,000 years, they had met their equals. And, for humanity, the real adventure was just beginning. 6 months after the Beijing's return to Earth, the galaxy was still adjusting to humanity's dramatic entrance onto the interstellar stage. Ambassador Elena Martinez stood in the observation lounge of the newly constructed embassy station, orbiting the Council homeworld of Zentaria Prime, watching alien ships navigate between massive orbital platforms that had been old when Earth's sun was young. The view was breathtaking, but Elena's attention was focused on the datapad in her hands. Intelligence reports from across the galaxy painted a complex picture of how different species were reacting to humanity's sudden appearance. Some were curious, others fearful, and a few were openly hostile. "Ambassador," came a voice behind her. Elena turned to see Dr. Sarah Kim, her chief xenological advisor, approaching with a concerned expression. "We've received another communication from the hegemony." Elena sighed. The Thrakkery hegemony had been the Council's primary military enforcement arm for centuries, and they were not adjusting well to the new political reality. "Let me guess. They're still demanding that we submit to proper authority and disarm our fleet." "Actually, it's worse than that. They're claiming that our actions at Tau Ceti were an act of terrorism against peaceful Council forces. They're calling for an official investigation and possible sanctions." Elena set down her datapad and looked back out at the orbital traffic. This was exactly what Earth Command had warned her about. Humanity's victory had been too complete, too sudden. The established powers were looking for ways to restore the old order, and the Thrakkery were leading the charge. What's High Counselor Zefix's position? Officially, he supports the peace treaty and recognizes Earth's sovereignty. Unofficially, our intelligence suggests he's under enormous pressure from the military faction to find a way to roll back the agreement. The politics were delicate. The Galactic Council operated on consensus, with major decisions requiring agreement from at least 70% of member species. Humanity's actions had shattered that consensus, leaving various factions scrambling to protect their interests. "Any word from Captain Walsh?" Elena asked. "The Beijing is currently on patrol near the Outer Rim, investigating reports of pirate activity. But Admiral Chun wants to keep our main battle fleet close to Earth until the political situation stabilizes." Elena nodded. It was a wise precaution. Despite the treaty, trust was still in short supply on both sides. The Council needed time to accept that humanity wasn't going away, and Earth needed to prove it could be a responsible galactic neighbor. Meanwhile, in the outer reaches of the Kepler system, Captain Walsh was learning that piracy in space was considerably more complex than its historical counterpart on Earth's oceans. The Beijing hung in space near a disabled freighter, its sensors analyzing the damage patterns while human Marines boarded the vessel. "Captain," Commander Torres reported from her tactical station, "the freighter's cargo manifest doesn't match what we're finding in the hold. They're carrying military-grade weapons disguised as agricultural equipment." Walsh frowned. This was the third such discovery in as many weeks. Someone was running a sophisticated smuggling operation, using legitimate shipping companies as cover. Any indication of where the weapons are headed? The shipping route would take them through 7 different systems before reaching their final destination. But, based on the energy signatures, these aren't Council weapons. The power cells are using an unknown isotopic composition. That was troubling. The Council's technology was well documented, having remained largely unchanged for centuries. If someone was developing new weapons technology, it could shift the balance of power throughout the galaxy. "Sir," the communications officer announced, "we're receiving a transmission from the freighter's captain. He's requesting to speak with you personally." "Put him through." The main screen flickered to reveal a humanoid alien with blue-tinted skin and large, multifaceted eyes. When he spoke, his voice carried the musical quality common to his species. The Melody were known throughout the galaxy for their artistic achievements. "Captain Walsh," the alien said, "I am Captain Nyrix of the merchant vessel Dawn's Promise. I wish to thank you for responding to our distress call so quickly." "What happened to your ship, Captain Nyrix?" The alien's expression grew troubled. "We were attacked by what appeared to be Council patrol vessels, but something was wrong. Their tactics were too aggressive, their weapons too powerful. They disabled our engines and boarded us, but they seemed to be searching for something specific." Walsh exchanged glances with Commander Torres. "What kind of cargo were you carrying?" "Agricultural synthesizers bound for the Outer Rim colonies. Standard humanitarian aid." Captain Nyrix paused, then added, "At least, that's what my manifest indicated. But your Marines have discovered military weapons in our hold. You didn't know about the weapons?" "I swear by the Song of Stars, I had no knowledge of any weapons aboard my vessel. Someone has used my ship without my consent, and now my crew is dead because of it." The pain in the alien's voice was genuine. Walsh had dealt with enough liars to recognize truth when he heard it. Someone was using legitimate shipping companies to move weapons, probably without the captain's knowledge. "Captain Nyrix, do you have any idea who might have had access to your cargo holds?" "We took on cargo at 7 different stations along our route. Any one of them could have substituted weapons for legitimate goods. But I suspect the corruption goes deeper than simple smuggling." "What do you mean?" The alien's musical voice dropped to a whisper. "There are rumors, Captain Walsh. Rumors of species that have grown tired of the Council's peaceful approach to governance. They believe that strength, not diplomacy, should determine galactic policy." Walsh felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you talking about a rebellion?" "Not a rebellion, exactly. More like a faction that believes the old ways were better. They call themselves the Iron Covenant, and they think your species' arrival has upset the natural order of things." Before Walsh could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the Beijing. The tactical display lit up with new contacts, 6 ships dropping out of hyperspace in attack formation. "Captain," Commander Torres announced, "we have incoming hostiles. Configuration matches Council patrol vessels, but they're broadcasting Iron Covenant identification codes." Walsh moved quickly to his command chair. "Red alert. All hands to battle stations. Open a channel to the attacking vessels." The main screen split to show both Captain Nyrix and a new alien face, this one belonging to a reptilian species Walsh didn't recognize. When it spoke, its voice was harsh and guttural. "Human vessel, you are in violation of Iron Covenant space. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Walsh kept his voice calm. "This is Captain Walsh of the United Earth ship Beijing. You are attacking a Council flag vessel in neutral space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The reptilian alien's laugh was like stones grinding together. "The Council's authority means nothing here, human. You will learn that your species' interference in galactic affairs will not be tolerated." "Sir," Commander Torres reported, "they're powering weapons. Energy signatures are much higher than standard Council armament." Walsh made a quick decision. "All ships, evasive maneuvers. Target their weapon systems, but try to disable rather than destroy. We need prisoners for interrogation." The battle that followed was brief, but intense. The Iron Covenant ships were indeed more powerful than standard Council vessels, but they were still operating with conventional tactics. The Beijing's quantum displacement capabilities allowed it to appear behind enemy ships before they could react, while its phase variance shields absorbed energy weapons that should have cut through standard defenses. Within 15 minutes, 4 of the attacking ships had been disabled, and the other 2 were fleeing toward the outer system. Walsh ordered pursuit of one vessel while allowing the other to escape. Sometimes it was useful to let survivors carry word of human capabilities back to their commanders. "Damage report," Walsh ordered. "Minor hull scoring on Deck 7 and 12. No injuries reported. The Covenant ships appear to be using modified Council weapons with enhanced power outputs, but their targeting systems couldn't lock onto us properly. Walsh nodded grimly. The Iron Covenant had better weapons, but inferior tactics. That suggested they had access to advanced technology, but lacked the experience to use it effectively. It was a dangerous combination. Enough power to cause serious damage, but not enough skill to use it strategically. Captain, the communications officer announced, we're receiving a priority transmission from Ambassador Martinez on Zenteria Prime. Put her through. Elena Martinez appeared on screen, and Walsh could see the concern in her expression. Captain, we have a problem. The Thackeray hegemony has formally accused Earth of destabilizing galactic security. They're calling for an emergency session of the Council to address what they're calling human aggression. The timing can't be a coincidence, Walsh replied. We just encountered Iron Covenant forces using enhanced weapons technology. They claim we're interfering in galactic affairs. That fits with intelligence we've been gathering here. There's definitely a faction within the Council that wants to roll back our treaty, and the Iron Covenant may be their military arm. They're positioning any human action as evidence that we're a threat to galactic stability. Walsh considered the implications. It's a neat trap. If we defend ourselves against their attacks, they claim we're the aggressors. If we don't fight back, they can destroy our ships with impunity. Exactly. And, with the Thackeray pushing for emergency powers to deal with the human threat, the Iron Covenant could end up as the official enforcement arm of the Council. The political maneuvering was sophisticated, Walsh had to admit. By framing humanity as the destabilizing force, the Iron Covenant could justify increasingly aggressive actions while positioning themselves as defenders of galactic peace. What's our next move? Walsh asked. We need evidence, Elena replied. Something that proves the Iron Covenant is operating outside Council authority and using illegal weapons technology. Without proof, it's just our word against theirs. Walsh looked at the tactical display showing the disabled Covenant ships. Ambassador, I think we just found our evidence. These ships are carrying weapons that violate at least 6 interstellar treaties. If we can trace where the technology came from, we might be able to prove they're not just pirates, but part of a larger conspiracy, Elena finished. Can you bring the ships back to Council space? The Beijing can tow one of them. I'll dispatch the escort destroyers to bring back the others. Do it. And Captain, be careful. If they're willing to attack a Council diplomatic mission, they won't hesitate to target our embassy station. The transmission ended, leaving Walsh to contemplate the changing nature of their situation. Humanity's entrance into galactic politics had been dramatic and successful, but it had also created new enemies. The Iron Covenant represented something more dangerous than simple military opposition. They were ideological opponents who saw human independence as a threat to the established order. Over the following days, as the Beijing and its escorts escorted the captured ships back toward Council space, Walsh received regular updates from Earth and the embassy. The political situation was deteriorating rapidly, with more species declaring support for either the existing treaty or the Thackeray position. Dr. Kevin Park, leading the technical analysis team aboard the Beijing, made a disturbing discovery about the captured weapons. Captain, these energy systems are definitely not Council technology. The power cells are using a controlled fusion process that's theoretically superior to anything in the Council database. Where could they have gotten it? That's the scary part. The manufacturing techniques suggest this technology was developed recently, within the last few years. Someone has been conducting advanced weapons research in secret, and they've made breakthroughs that put them decades ahead of Council science. Walsh felt pieces of a larger puzzle clicking into place. Dr. Park, is it possible that our arrival in the galaxy prompted this research? That someone saw our technology demonstrations and decided they needed to upgrade their own capabilities? It's not just possible, Captain, it's probable. The quantum resonance patterns in these weapons systems show clear influence from our displacement drive technology. Someone has been studying our ships and adapting our innovations for their own purposes. The implications were staggering. The Iron Covenant hadn't just been planning to oppose humanity politically. They had been reverse engineering human technology to level the playing field militarily. It was a level of long-term planning that suggested the conspiracy went much deeper than anyone had realized. "Get me Admiral Chun," Walsh ordered. "Channel open, sir." Admiral Chun appeared on screen, and Walsh could see the stress of the past months in her expression. "Captain, please tell me you have good news." "Mixed news, Admiral. We've captured Iron Covenant vessels with advanced weapons technology that appears to be derived from our own innovations. It proves they've been planning this confrontation since we first arrived in the galaxy." "And the bad news?" "If they've been studying our technology for 6 months, they may have found ways to counter our advantages. Our next encounter might not be as one-sided as the first." Admiral Chun was quiet for a moment, processing the implications. "Captain, change course for Earth immediately. If there's going to be a war, we need to be prepared for enemies who know how we fight." As the Beijing altered course for home, Walsh couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was about to face its greatest test since first leaving Earth. The galaxy had seemed vast and full of possibilities when they first ventured into space, but now it felt like a battlefield where ancient powers were preparing to crush the upstart species that dared to claim equality among the stars. The real question was whether human ingenuity and determination would be enough when facing enemies who had learned from humanity's own successes. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in the organization's 1,000-year history. Representatives from nearly 500 species filled the massive amphitheater on Zentaria Prime, their voices creating a cacophony of languages that the universal translators struggled to process in real time. Ambassador Elena Martinez sat in the newly designated Earth section, acutely aware that she was representing not just humanity, but the principle that emerging species had the right to determine their own destiny. Around her, the political battle lines were clearly drawn. The Thackeray delegation occupied the prime position traditionally reserved for the Council's military arm. General Korthak, their chief representative, was an imposing figure even by Thackeray standards, nearly 3 meters tall, with armored plating that had been scarred by centuries of combat. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to unquestioned obedience. "Honored counselors," General Korthak began, "we face an unprecedented threat to galactic stability. The humans have introduced weapons technology that violates fundamental principles of interstellar law. Their quantum displacement capabilities make a mockery of established military doctrine, and their aggressive expansion threatens the peace we have maintained for millennia." Elena felt her jaw clench. Every word was carefully chosen to make humanity sound like invaders rather than defenders. The Thackeray were masters of political manipulation, turning Earth's technological achievements into evidence of hostile intent. Furthermore, the general continued, recent attacks on legitimate shipping in the Outer Rim demonstrate that human forces are operating beyond any reasonable interpretation of defensive action. They are conducting aggressive patrols in neutral space, intercepting vessels without authority, and confiscating cargo that belongs to sovereign species. The accusation hung in the air like a challenge. Elena knew that Korthak was referring to Captain Walsh's encounter with the Iron Covenant smugglers, but the Thackeray version of events made the Beijing sound like a pirate ship rather than a peacekeeping force. High Counselor Zefix, presiding over the session, gestured for Elena to respond. "Ambassador Martinez, how does Earth answer these charges?" Elena arose slowly, knowing that her next words would determine whether humanity remained a free species or became the galaxy's newest pariah. "Honored counselors, Earth rejects these accusations completely. Our forces have acted only in defense of legitimate shipping and in response to unprovoked attacks by the organization calling itself the Iron Covenant." She activated her data pad, projecting holographic evidence into the center of the amphitheater. "These are energy signatures from weapons recovered from Covenant vessels. As you can see, they violate treaty restrictions on weapons development and utilize technology that poses a threat to all peaceful species." Murmurs rippled through the assembly as delegates examined the technical data. Several species that had remained neutral began whispering among themselves, clearly concerned by the implications. "The Iron Covenant has been conducting illegal weapons research while hiding behind false accusations against Earth," Elena continued. "They seek to destabilize the galaxy not through diplomacy, but through force and intimidation. General Korthak's armored features showed what might have been amusement. Ambassador, you speak of this Iron Covenant as if it were some vast conspiracy. In reality, these are simply concerned citizens responding to the threat that your species represents. When humans arrive in a system with quantum weapons that can appear anywhere without warning, of course local security forces feel compelled to upgrade their capabilities. It was a clever argument, Elena had to admit. By framing the Covenant as a natural response to human technology, Korthak was making Earth responsible for the arms race it had triggered. General Korthak, Elena replied. Are you saying that the Thrakkery hegemony supports the development of illegal weapons by unauthorized groups? The question struck home. If Korthak endorsed the Covenant's actions, he would be admitting that the hegemony supported treaty violations. If he condemned them, he would undermine his argument about legitimate security concerns. The hegemony supports the right of all species to defend themselves against threats, Korthak said carefully. However, we believe the real solution is to address the source of the instability, namely, the human refusal to accept proper oversight of their military capabilities. Elena saw the trap being set. The Thrakkery wanted to make this about human weapons rather than Covenant violations, shifting the debate toward mandatory disarmament of Earth's fleet. Before she could respond, a new voice cut through the tension. If I may interrupt this fascinating exercise in misdirection, came a melodic tone from the section reserved for the Melody delegation. Representative Thyrix, Captain Thyrix's cousin and a respected voice in council debates, stood gracefully. I believe we are overlooking crucial evidence about the Iron Covenant's true nature. Thyrix activated his own projector, displaying shipping records and communication intercepts. These documents, recovered from Covenant vessels, show a coordinated campaign to destabilize trade routes throughout the Outer Rim. The attacks began months before humanity's first contact with the Council, suggesting this organization has goals beyond simply responding to human presence. The revelation sent shockwaves through the Assembly. If the Iron Covenant predated human contact, then their actions couldn't be blamed on Earth's arrival in galactic politics. Furthermore, Thyrix continued, the communication intercepts reference something called Project Restoration, an apparent plan to replace the current council structure with what they term proper military governance. General Korthak's reaction was immediate and telling. His armored form shifted to a darker coloration, the Thrakkery equivalent of barely controlled rage. These allegations are baseless conspiracy theories designed to deflect attention from the human threat. Are they? Came another voice. This time it was Counselor Vextrix of the Zentari, speaking from the host delegation's position. General Korthak, perhaps you could explain why Thrakkery vessels have been detected in systems where Covenant attacks occurred. The amphitheater fell silent. The Zentari were the Council's founding species, their word carrying enormous weight. If they were questioning Thrakkery involvement with the Iron Covenant, the entire political dynamic was about to shift. Thrakkery forces patrol throughout the galaxy, Korthak replied. But Elena could hear the strain in his translated voice. Our presence in those systems was part of routine security operations. Routine operations that consistently arrived after Covenant attacks rather than preventing them. Vextrix pressed. Our intelligence suggests a disturbing pattern of Thrakkery vessels withdrawing from areas shortly before Covenant forces appeared. Elena felt the momentum shifting in humanity's favor. The Zentari had clearly been conducting their own investigation into the Iron Covenant, and their findings supported Earth's position. Counselor Vextrix continued his devastating analysis. We have also discovered that several Thrakkery military contractors have been developing enhanced weapons systems in violation of Council oversight protocols. These same contractors appear to have supplied technology found aboard Covenant vessels. General Korthak was trapped. Denial would be pointless. The Zentari had clearly done their homework. But admission would mean acknowledging that the Thrakkery had been supporting an illegal military organization while publicly calling for peace. The hegemony's industrial base produces weapons for legitimate defense contractors throughout the galaxy, Korthak said finally. If some of those weapons were stolen or misappropriated, that is hardly our responsibility. It was a weak response, and everyone in the chamber knew it. Elena seized the moment to drive home her advantage. Honored counselors, she said, Earth proposes a joint investigation into Iron Covenant activities, with full access to captured vessels and personnel. Let the evidence speak for itself about who truly threatens galactic stability. The proposal was brilliant strategy. If the Thrakkery opposed the investigation, they would appear to be hiding something. If they supported it, the evidence would likely expose their connection to the Covenant conspiracy. High Counselor Zephyx looked around the amphitheater, gauging the mood of the assembly. All those in favor of Ambassador Martinez's proposal? The vote was closer than Elena had hoped, but decisive enough. 68% of the member species supported the investigation, with most of the opposition coming from traditional Thrakkery allies. The motion passes, Zephyx announced. A joint investigative committee will be formed with representatives from 12 species, including Earth. General Korthak, the hegemony's cooperation is expected and required. As the session adjourned, Elena felt cautiously optimistic. They had won a significant political victory, but she knew the real test would come when the investigation began uncovering the truth about the Iron Covenant conspiracy. Later that day, Elena met with Dr. Kim in the embassy's Secure Communication Center to brief Earth Command on the Council session's outcome. The political situation has stabilized for now, Elena reported. But we're still walking a tightrope. The investigation will give us a chance to prove the Iron Covenant's illegitimate nature, but it also means opening our own technology to scrutiny. Admiral Chen appeared on the secure channel from Earth. Ambassador, we've received concerning intelligence from our deep space monitoring stations. Long-range sensors are detecting massive fleet movements in the Outer Rim. Someone is marshaling forces for what appears to be a major military operation. Elena felt her stomach drop. Iron Covenant. Unknown, but the energy signatures don't match any known council configurations. Whatever's coming, it's bigger and more sophisticated than anything we've seen before. Dr. Kim looked up from her data analysis. Admiral, could this be related to the technology transfers we discovered? If the Covenant has been reverse engineering human innovations for months, they may have built an entire fleet around those capabilities. It's possible, Shin replied grimly. Captain Walsh is en route to investigate. But if they've been preparing for this long, we may be facing an enemy that knows our tactics and has developed counters for our advantages. Elena stared at the tactical displays showing the mysterious fleet movements. The political victory at the council session suddenly felt hollow. They had won the argument, but the real battle might be about to begin. Admiral, Elena said, what are our options if this turns into open warfare? Chen's expression was grave. We have advantages, better technology, superior tactics, and now political legitimacy. But if they've been studying us since first contact, those advantages may not be as decisive as we hope. And if we lose? Then, humanity becomes a cautionary tale about what happens when emerging species challenge the established order. But, Elena, we're not going to lose. Humans have never surrendered to anyone, and we're not starting now. The transmission ended, leaving Elena to contemplate the enormity of what humanity faced. They had announced themselves to the galaxy as equals, but now they had to prove they could survive as equals. The next few weeks would determine whether Earth's children would inherit the stars or become another footnote in galactic history. Meanwhile, in the depths of space beyond the Outer Rim, Iron Covenant forces were completing final preparations for an operation they called the Correction. General Vorthak, the Covenant's supreme commander, studied tactical displays showing human ship movements with satisfaction. The humans believe their political maneuvering has secured their position, he told his assembled fleet commanders. They think exposure of our operations will somehow protect them from the consequences of their interference. The alien generals around the strategy table represented a dozen different species, all united by the belief that the galaxy needed strong leadership rather than democratic consensus. They had watched the Council's weakness with growing disgust for decades, waiting for the right moment to act. The investigation will tie up Council forces and distract them from military preparations, General Vorthak continued. By the time they realize the scope of our operations, Earth will be pacified and the human threat eliminated. Then, we can proceed with the proper restructuring of galactic governance. One of his subordinates, a crystalline being similar to High Counselor Zephyx, but larger and more militaristic, raised a concern. General, our intelligence suggests the humans have technological capabilities we have not yet encountered. Their quantum displacement drives alone represent a significant tactical challenge, which is why we have been preparing for 18 months, Vorthak replied. Our new vessels incorporate quantum detection grids and phase-lock weapons specifically designed to counter human advantages. When they attempt their signature disappearing act, they will find themselves trapped in normal space and vulnerable to conventional attack. The plan was comprehensive and ruthless. Iron Covenant forces would simultaneously strike at Earth, Luna Station, and the Embassy Station at Centaria Prime. With humanity's leadership eliminated and their home system occupied, the rest of the galaxy would see the futility of opposing Covenant authority. What about Council response? Asked another commander. The Council will debate and delay while their member worlds burn, Vorthak said dismissively. By the time they authorize military action, the correction will be complete, and the galaxy will have new leadership. It was a strategy born from centuries of frustration with the Council's peaceful approach to governance. The Iron Covenant represented species that believed strength, not diplomacy, should determine galactic policy. They had waited patiently for the right crisis to justify their takeover, and humanity's arrival had provided exactly the excuse they needed. As Covenant forces began their final approach toward Earth, General Vorthak allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The galaxy was about to learn that there were worse things than human aggression, starting with what happened when that aggression was turned against those who threatened Earth's freedom. The real test of human determination was about to begin. The attack came without warning, striking simultaneously across 3 star systems in a coordination that spoke of months of careful planning. Admiral Sarah Chun was in her quarters aboard Luna Station when the alarms began screaming, jolting her from a brief moment of rest that had become increasingly rare since humanity's entry into galactic politics. Admiral to the bridge, Priority 1, came the announcement as Chun grabbed her uniform and ran through corridors filled with personnel rushing to battle stations. The command center was controlled chaos when she arrived. Officers worked frantically at their stations while displays showed tactical information that made Chin's blood run cold. Hundreds of enemy contacts were dropping out of hyperspace throughout the Sol system, their quantum signatures unlike anything in the Council database. Report, Chun ordered as she took her position at the Central Command platform. Ma'am, we're tracking over 300 hostile vessels, Commander Jackson reported from the tactical station. They've bypassed our outer sensor grid completely. Appears they've been using some kind of stealth technology we've never encountered before. Chin studied the tactical display with growing alarm. The enemy fleet was massive, easily 5 times larger than anything humanity had ever assembled. Worse, their formation suggested they had detailed knowledge of Earth's defensive capabilities. What about our fleet? The Beijing is 2 days out from the Outer Rim. Most of our destroyer squadron is scattered on patrol missions. We have maybe 30 vessels in immediate response range. 30 ships against 300. The odds were almost insurmountable, even with humanity's technological advantages. Ma'am, the communications officer announced. Incoming transmission from the lead enemy vessel. They're demanding to speak with Earth Command. Put them through. The main display shifted to show an alien Chun had never seen before. Humanoid, but larger, with armored skin and features that suggested a predatory species. When it spoke, its voice carried absolute authority. I am General Vorthak of the Iron Covenant. Your species' interference in galactic affairs ends today. Surrender immediately, and your deaths will be swift. Chin stepped forward, her voice steady despite the desperate nature of their situation. This is Admiral Chun of United Earth Command. You are in violation of the peace treaty signed by the Galactic Council. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Vorthak's laugh was like grinding metal. The Council's authority is meaningless. Today begins a new era of galactic governance, one based on strength rather than weakness. You will serve as an example to any species that thinks they can challenge the natural order. General, Chun replied, you're about to learn why humans have never been conquered by anyone. The transmission ended, and Chun turned to her staff. All vessels, battle stations. Implement Defense Plan Omega. Defense Plan Omega was humanity's last resort, a strategy developed for exactly this scenario. If Earth faced overwhelming odds, the plan called for maximum aggression rather than defensive positioning. The theory was that humans fought best when they had nothing to lose. "Ma'am," Commander Jackson reported, "the enemy fleet is breaking into 3 assault groups. Primary target appears to be Earth itself, with secondary strikes against Luna Station and the orbital defense platforms." Chen nodded grimly. The Covenant had studied human tactics well enough to recognize the key strategic targets. But they had also made a crucial mistake. They were fighting like conventional military forces rather than the desperate defenders of humanity's homeworld. "Signal all ships," Chen ordered. "Execute Protocol 7. Protocol 7 was something no alien species had ever encountered. The complete abandonment of traditional military doctrine in favor of maximum damage dealing. Human vessels would ignore their own safety, using ramming attacks, overloaded weapons, and even reactor detonations to take down enemy ships. The first engagement occurred near the asteroid belt, where 6 human corvettes encountered a Covenant squadron of 20 vessels. The aliens expected conventional tactics, long-range weapons exchanges followed by maneuvering for advantage. Instead, the human ships charged directly into the enemy formation. Captain Lisa Park, commanding the corvette Indomitable, made the opening move. Her ship materialized directly between 2 Covenant cruisers, its quantum displacement drive allowing it to appear inside their defensive formation. Instead of engaging in a conventional firefight, Park ordered her engineering team to overload the main reactor. "All hands, abandon ship," she announced over the comm system. "Detonate on my mark." The corvette's crew evacuated in escape pods as the Indomitable became a guided missile aimed at the Covenant flagship. When the reactor detonated, the explosion destroyed 3 enemy vessels and severely damaged 4 others. It was a trade that horrified professional military officers throughout the galaxy, sacrificing an entire ship and crew to eliminate enemy vessels. But for humans fighting for their species' survival, it was simply another tactical option. The pattern repeated throughout the system as human vessels employed suicide tactics, ramming attacks, and weapons overloads that no sane military planner would authorize. The Covenant forces found themselves facing an enemy that ignored conventional wisdom about acceptable losses. General Vorthak watched the tactical displays with growing disbelief. "What are they doing? Their tactics are completely irrational." "Sir," reported one of his subordinates, "they appear to be sacrificing individual vessels to maximize damage to our forces. We've lost 18 ships in the past hour, while they've only lost 12. Impossible. No species fights with such disregard for their own casualties." But the evidence was undeniable. Human forces were treating their own ships as expendable weapons, using them in ways that violated every principle of military efficiency. It was the tactical equivalent of a berserker charge, and it was working. On Earth, the global population watched the battle unfold through live feeds from orbital cameras. Instead of panic, the footage showed something that amazed observers throughout the galaxy: absolute determination. Humans around the world volunteered for military service, offered their personal spacecraft for the defense effort, and prepared for ground combat if the orbital defenses failed. Dr. Hayes, now serving as Earth's chief xenological advisor, provided analysis that was broadcast to every human settlement in the solar system. "The enemy expects us to surrender when faced with overwhelming odds," she announced. "They've studied other species that face similar situations, and they assume we'll follow the same pattern. They're about to learn that humans are different." The turning point came when Captain Walsh and the Beijing arrived from the Outer Rim. Instead of joining the defensive formation around Earth, Walsh implemented a strategy that demonstrated the difference between human and alien military thinking. "All ships, this is Captain Walsh," he announced over the fleet communication network. "We're not going to defend Earth by staying close to Earth. We're going to defend it by making the enemy pay such a high price for every meter of space that they lose the will to continue." The Beijing and its escort vessels struck deep into Covenant territory, targeting supply ships, communication relays, and command vessels. While the main battle raged around Earth, Walsh's forces eliminated the infrastructure that the Covenant fleet needed to maintain its offensive. The tactic was pure human audacity. Instead of defending their home directly, they were attacking the enemy's ability to sustain the assault. It required dividing their already outnumbered forces, but it played to humanity's strengths in mobility and unpredictability. General Vorthak found his carefully planned assault falling apart as his supply lines collapsed and his communications network failed. Human strike teams appeared throughout his rear areas, eliminating logistics vessels and command ships with surgical precision. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, "we've lost 30% of our support vessels. The humans are somehow targeting our most critical assets. How are they penetrating our formation so effectively?" "Unknown, sir. Their quantum displacement technology appears to have been upgraded since our last intelligence reports. They're moving through space in ways we didn't think were possible." What Vorthak didn't know was that Dr. Park and her team had spent the past 6 months developing new applications for quantum displacement technology. Human ships could now phase through solid matter for brief periods, allowing them to pass through enemy hulls and detonate charges inside Covenant vessels. The battle's climax came when Admiral Chun made a decision that would be studied by military historians for centuries. Instead of continuing the defensive battle around Earth, she ordered the entire human fleet to concentrate for a single massive assault on the Covenant command ship. "All vessels, this is Admiral Chun. We're going to end this fight the way humans always end fights, by hitting our enemies harder than they hit us. Target the Covenant flagship. Full assault, no reserves." What followed was the largest space battle in human history. 38 human vessels, many of them damaged and running on emergency power, charged directly at General Vorthak's massive command ship. The aliens had superior numbers and firepower, but they had never faced an enemy willing to sacrifice everything for victory. The human fleet carved through Covenant formations like a spear thrust, absorbing devastating casualties, but never slowing down. Ships that lost main power used backup thrusters to ram enemy vessels. Crews that lost life support continued fighting until the end. Captain Walsh's Beijing led the final assault, its quantum displacement drive allowing it to appear directly alongside Vorthak's flagship. Instead of engaging in a conventional ship-to-ship battle, Walsh did something that shocked every observer throughout the galaxy. "This is Captain Walsh to General Vorthak," he announced on an open channel. "You wanted to see what human aggression looks like. Congratulations, you're about to get a close-up view." The Beijing latched onto the Covenant flagship using magnetic grapples and began overloading its quantum drive. The resulting explosion would destroy both ships, but it would also eliminate the Covenant's command structure and end the battle. "Captain," Commander Torres said quietly, "the crew evacuation is complete. All personnel are away." Walsh nodded, his hand hovering over the detonation controls. "Torres, I want you to know it's been an honor serving with you." "Sir, the honor was mine." The explosion that followed was visible from Earth's surface, a brief star that announced humanity's victory to the solar system. The Beijing and the Covenant flagship disappeared in a flash of energy that scattered both fleets and ended the largest threat to Earth since the species first left their homeworld. In the aftermath, as Covenant forces retreated in disorder and Council reinforcements arrived to secure the system, Admiral Chin stood once again on Luna Station's observation deck. The view of Earth was the same as it had been 6 months ago, but everything else had changed. Humanity had proven itself in the crucible of interstellar warfare. They had faced overwhelming odds and prevailed not through superior technology or numbers, but through the indomitable will that had carried them from caves to starships. The galaxy now knew that humans would never surrender, never submit, and never stop fighting for their freedom. Ambassador Martinez's voice came through the communication system from Zentaria Prime, where the Council was in emergency session. "Admiral, the formal vote was unanimous. Earth has been granted permanent Council membership with full voting rights. The investigation into the Iron Covenant conspiracy is proceeding, and several species have offered military assistance to help hunt down the remaining cells." Chin smiled for the first time in weeks. "What about the Thrakkery? General Korthak has been arrested for conspiracy and treason. It appears the hegemony's involvement was even deeper than we suspected. There's talk of expelling them from the Council entirely." Chin nodded. Justice was important, but it wouldn't bring back the crews that had died defending Earth. Captain Walsh and hundreds of other humans had paid the ultimate price to secure their species' freedom. Elena, Chen said quietly, make sure the memorial includes everyone who fought in this battle. Not just the ships that were lost, but every human who stood ready to defend Earth. They all deserve to be remembered. Already arranged, Admiral. And there's something else. We've received formal requests from 17 species asking to establish formal diplomatic relations with Earth. It seems that word of our victory has spread throughout the galaxy. Good. But, Elena, make sure they understand one thing. We're not interested in conquering anyone or imposing our will on other species. We just want the right to exist as free people among the stars. I'll make that clear, Admiral. As the transmission ended, Chen looked down at Earth one more time. The blue marble continued its ancient rotation, unaware that its children had just secured their place among the civilizations of the galaxy. Humanity had received a threat from the Galactic Council and sent back a battle proclamation that would be remembered for millennia. The message was simple. Humans don't surrender, they don't back down, and they never stop fighting for what they believe in. It was a lesson the galaxy would never forget, and a promise that would echo through the stars for as long as humanity existed. The age of human expansion had truly begun, not as conquerors or subjects, but as equals who had earned their place through courage, sacrifice, and the unbreakable spirit that defined their species. Earth's children were finally free to inherit the universe their ancestors had dreamed of reaching, and they would make sure that freedom was never threatened again.